I'm calling to order this public hearing or public roundtable of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Friday, January 16th, 2026. The time is 12:18 in the afternoon, and we are having this hearing a roundtable in room 412 of the John A. Wilson Building. The subject of this hearing is Office of the State Superintendent of Education, Special Education Transportation. Reading from the hearing notice, the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, or OSSE Division of Student Transportation, is tasked with providing safe, reliable, and efficient transportation services for nearly 4,000 eligible district students with disabilities. The Committee of the Whole held a public oversight hearing on OSSE DOT on Tuesday, October 28th, during which parents, school leaders, and school transportation experts testified about the consequences of an insufficient and unreliable transit system and emphasized the urgent need for a dependable bus tracking system. The Committee of the Whole held a follow-up roundtable on December 3rd to determine the status of procurement for a routing and GPS system and to receive milestones for the full implementation of the system and a strategic plan for resolving all of OSSE DOT issues. The purpose of this third roundtable, today's roundtable, is to review progress on the strategic plan and implementation of the GPS system, as well as examine OSSE DOT's budget and expenditures. As of the new year, the GPS contract executed before Thanksgiving has not been submitted to the council as required by the Home Rule Act. We had been promised that the contract would be given to us by January 2nd, and as of today, it has not been submitted to the council. So we have this hearing. The hearing is limited to invited witnesses and agency representatives. So we have two public witnesses, and then we have two representatives from agencies. Let's start with the two public witnesses, Sharon Edwards and Ty Andrews. Are they here or are they online? They're both online. So we've purposely kept these roundtables limited in terms of how many witnesses. The October hearing had quite a number of witnesses testifying with regard to OSSE DOT issues. So we have the two today. I assume they're being let in.
Yes, they've declined.
That's not helpful. We'll give it a minute. See if Sharon Edwards and Ty Andrews will accept being admitted as panelists. The tribulations of Zoom. Hmm? I see Ty Andrews.
Yeah, I'm still working on sharing.
Sharon Edwards, we need you to accept being admitted as a panelist. Gonna wait. So we're waiting for both of them to come into the, whatever it is for Zoom. We're trying to see if we can get Ms. Edwards to admit, to accept admittance. So why don't we proceed with Ty Andrews? You're up, if you're here. I think you're here. Ms. Andrews?
Good afternoon. My apologies, everyone. I got tied up at work, and I'll be really short and sweet. Good morning. My name is Ty Andrews, and I'm a proud Ward 8 resident and parent of two children, Terrence Jr., who attends Thompson Elementary, and Amari, a student at McKinley Technology High School. I have testified before you several times over the last 2 to 3 years in reference to my severe issues with the OSSE DOT program. Because OSSE DOT implemented the transportation stipend program last year, I assumed my experience would be better. It has not. This year, we made the decision to transfer our son to an IB elementary school, which fortunately is located near my workplace, and there are only 3 such schools in the city. Although we had initially hoped to send him to Shepherd, the logistics of getting him there on time with our work schedules would not be feasible. Moreover, we wanted to avoid the extended hours he would have spent on the school bus via OSSE. As a result, we opted for the transportation stipend, which allows me to take him to school via Metro on my way to work and pick him up on my way home. However, the process of applying for and receiving the stipend was very frustrating. OSSI requires a voided check or certified bank statement to process direct deposit. Given that checks are no longer commonly used, this requirement is outdated. Additionally, the bank statement must be requested directly from the bank, which involves waiting for them to send it rather than being able to access it online or in person at the bank. After completing the application process, we were finally approved for the stipend, but only received payments for September and October. Subsequently, payments were stopped without any notification. When I reached out to OSSI in November for clarification, I was informed that the issue stemmed from either the school not updating my son's IEP or failing to indicate that he still required transportation services. This is despite me clearly communicating to the school that transportation services should remain in place. The school has since contacted me, which was the first week of January, telling me that they're working on resolving the issue, but I'm uncertain on whether or not it has been addressed. I have other issues that need to be addressed about my son's IB school, which I will present at the later date time and testimony. But when and who will be held accountable for the disruption in academics for our youth and the financial burden placed on our parents to provide transportation? Thank you for your time, and I welcome any follow up.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. So if you could provide us with a copy of your statement, that would be helpful. Or actually,
Yes, I submitted
have
it earlier this morning.
Okay. And the issue then is that the application process is very burdensome for you to be reimbursed for transportation. You're providing the transportation yourself, and then they suddenly questioned whether you were eligible for the transportation service. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct.
And is it the school or your communication directly with OSSE DOT?
I communicated directly with OSSE DOT. They told me that, and when I contacted the school, they basically said there was nothing that they could do. It was out of their hands. But then again, they called me as soon as the children came back from break the first week of January, saying that they think they can fix the issue. But I haven't heard back from them since.
Okay.
And so I think it's a drop down in communication between the LEA representatives at the school and the contact person at OSSE.
All right, I will ask OSSE DOT when they testify what's going on. I may not get an answer today, but because they may have to check it out, but I will ask them. Give me just a second. I don't have any other questions for you. Give me just a second. Councilmember, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Andrews, you're excused. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Give me a second while we try to track down the other witness. All right, we're unable to get the Ms. Edwards, so we're going to move on to the government witnesses. I have two, Raphael Park, who is the Deputy Superintendent of Operations, Office of the State Superintendent of Education, and Nancy Hateman, who is with the Office of Contracting and Procurement. My understanding is, Mr. Park, you have a statement.
Yes.
I have a copy of it. Ms. Hateman, you're just here to answer questions.
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Park, when you're ready, and good afternoon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, members of the Committee of the Whole, and council staff. My name is Raphael Park. I serve as the Deputy Superintendent of Operations at the Office of the State Superintendent of Education. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on our agency's student transportation services. Each day, OSSE DOT is responsible for helping approximately 3,600 students get to school and safely back home. We understand at the center of this work is a simple but critical goal: ensuring that every student gets to school on time every day. That goal guides our decisions and our day-to-day operations, and we are working deliberately and consistently to move closer to it. Today, I will focus on 3 areas that reflect both our priorities and the seriousness with which we are approaching this work. First, I will provide an update on the Enterprise GPS Routing and Parent Application System contract and the implementation work that is already underway. Second, I will discuss progress on our strategic roadmap, particularly the steps we have taken since the last roundtable to improve parent communication and frontline operations. Third, I will highlight our efforts over the past year to bring greater discipline and sustainability to our student transportation spending while maintaining service quality for students. I want to begin with the modernization of our enterprise system because this work is foundational to how families experience student transportation. With the support of the mayor and the council, OSSE established a new capital project in FY 2025 to procure a modern enterprise system for OSSE DOT. In late November 2025, the Office of Contracting and Procurement awarded a letter contract to a new vendor, Tyler Technologies. The final definitized contract is valued at just over $2 million. The Office of the Attorney General approved the contract yesterday afternoon. It was routed to OPLA for review this morning and will be filed with the council shortly. OSSE DOT and the vendor have been actively engaged in early implementation work since our letter contract was awarded. This work includes data preparation, such as bus fleet, user account, student information, and school profile data setup, and GIS map integration for all surrounding county maps that OSSE serves. This necessary detailed groundwork will, if and when the final contract is approved, enable the system to function with accuracy and precision when the system comes online. If awarded, the next steps will focus on continued data configuration, the installation of tablet computers on our buses, staff training, and system validation. Each of these steps must be completed with fidelity to deliver an enterprise system that is reliable, accurate, and useful for families and for our agency. I will now turn to our strategic roadmap. Since our last council roundtable in December, OSSE DOT has improved how we communicate with families and support for frontline staff. This work was informed by feedback we received from parents around clarity, consistency, and access to information. We take that feedback seriously and treat it as an operational responsibility, not just a communication issue. Over the past month, we updated the OSSE DOT Family Handbook. The revised handbook provides clearer explanations of OSSE DOT policies, including the complaint intake process and what families can expect when concerns are raised. The goal of this update was to reduce confusion, set clearer expectations, and make our processes easier for families to understand. We have also developed a new route finder dashboard for our parent resource center called Agents. This internal tool allows call center staff to access parent, student, school, and route information more quickly in a centralized view. In reducing the amount of time staff spends navigating multiple systems while parents are on hold, we are improving response time, increasing accuracy, and enabling call agents to resolve issues more effectively. Finally, I want to discuss our efforts to reduce spending and operate more sustainably. In FY 24 and 5, OSSE DOT requires supplemental funding to support operations due to significant year-over-year increases in student ridership. We would like to thank the council and the mayor for providing this critical funding. Over the past year, OSSE DOT implemented meaningful operational changes, reducing our anticipated annual spending by nearly $16 million from 25 to 26. by proactively developing the OSSE DOT parent portal, an online tool that enables families to confirm their child's need for transportation. We were able to significantly reduce transportation demand and expand the parent stipend program while continuing to meet student transportation needs. As a result, we are operating within our initial approved budget and should be able to maintain our present on-time performance levels without any supplemental funding. In closing, I am proud that the OSSE DOT team is making continuous progress. We are improving our routing technology, agency communications, and fiscal responsibility. While there is still work ahead, these efforts reflect a clear direction and a serious commitment to getting this right for all of our students and families. I am pleased to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
I'm going to start by asking some questions about the contract. So the contract was completed, the legal sufficiency was completed by Attorney General's office yesterday.
Correct.
When was it submitted to them for legal sufficiency review?
I believe it was submitted earlier this week. I don't know the specific date, but earlier this week.
All right, the
Although they
contract,
had been working with us all along in reviewing documents.
the bidder was selected right before Thanksgiving, as I
Correct.
recall. So why did it take a month and a half to get to OAG?
Well, there's finalizing the documents when we do the letter contract. It's not that the entire schedule is complete for the deliverable dates and things like that. So that's one aspect of finalizing the terms of the contract, getting the clearances that the vendor needs. This was a new vendor who had not done work with the district before, and then just preparing the internal documents that explain and justify the award decision. And also, this was during the holiday season, so there were a lot of different people absent from the office at different times.
I don't have a sense that there was a sense of urgency around this, even though this is the third hearing that we've had on this. Does it usually take 6 weeks to
Yes.
submit to Attorney General a contract?
It can. And in this case also, additional time was used during that period to negotiate a modification to the contract to add additional money and an additional task to be performed during the period of the letter contract. So time was needed in order to negotiate that modification as well as to prepare the documents.
The modification was to the letter contract?
Yes. To add additional money and an additional task.
I have to say, I'm just feeling dissatisfied here. 6 weeks. I mean, we're talking November 25th to January 12th. That's 12 and 7, 6, 12 and 6, 18 and 30. Yeah, that's more than a month and a half. There's no effort to have the contract documents ready at the time that there's an award?
When the letter contract is awarded, the entire contract itself is not necessarily completed. That's why we have a letter contract. And then the definitive contract has more specifics to it. And then we do have to prepare the package. So it is not unusual that the entire complete council package is not done at the time of the letter contract award.
Well, I get that it wouldn't be done at November 25th, but again, it's a month and a half before it comes to us. I had talked with, I believe with OSSE as well as with OPLA about getting this on the council's January 6th agenda. And in December, I was told that I hesitate to say doable because there was a little bit of hesitation, but that, as I recall, the communication was, well, it wouldn't be possible to get it to us in December, but maybe January 2nd, it could be filed. kind of blew that by 10 days. No, more than 10 days, because we still don't have it. You mentioned that it took time for the vendor, the contractor, to clear various documents that are required. I assume that includes clean hands?
Well, Clean Hands was obtained initially for the letter contract, but then we have to verify it for the submission of the council package and finalizing the terms of the definitized contract. And then in the case of this, we did have to do the modification, which then requires modifications to the documents that were existing.
Give me a sec. I'm sorry, I missed the very last part of that. So clean hands, well, why would clean hands have to be reapplied for?
It depends on when they got it initially for the award of the letter contract, because when we submit it to the council, it has to be current within 90 days.
Okay. Well, I have not a clue when it's going to be submitted to the council, since I was hoping it would be January 2nd. Forgive me, that was a little snarky. But 90 days from February 3rd would be November 1st, roughly. Clean hands would have been obtained before November 1st when it was a letter contract awarded in November 25th?
It is possible, yes.
You don't know for sure.
In this case, I don't know the date of the document.
And what were the other items that the contractor had to provide?
Well, we always have to get the, oh, you just mentioned Clean Hands. So that's one of the ones, but in this case, we had to do the modification, which also took the time for the contracting officer and specialist to finalize with the contractor the modification, which then required that be accommodated in whatever documents were being prepared for the council.
Mr. Park, so how limited is the work that can be done at this point, since it's a letter contract for, if I remember correctly, under $100,000?
So there is currently no impact to the actual timeline on the project. That's why we chose to do a letter contract after discussing with OCP colleagues as well. And even the reason for the modification is, in order for this project to go well, we have to do a lot of system related foundational work, making sure the routing system recognizes all 60 plus LEAs we serve, their calendar, their student information, how they, operate on what days, including making sure that there's mapping technology across the entire DMV area, not only in DC, but Maryland counties and Virginia as well. So the work of the early implementation data configuration work is actually happening. So we have not had to stop actual work because of the movement of this final contract.
Okay, you have not had to stop work because of this, but have you limited the work because of this?
No.
There's not more that the contractor could be doing right now.
I mean, not to my understanding, we're doing the legwork that we have to do now.
Okay, so when will we get the contract, both of you? When will we get the contract?
Well, the contract right now is been submitted in the IQ system and is with the Office of Policy and Legislative Affairs and goes through that process. I have spoken to them and they have agreed to expedite it. I don't have a specific day, but they did agree to expedite it.
Can you press them to get it to us by January 26th? I believe that's a Monday.
So a week from Monday, a week from this coming Monday, I will relay that to them and encourage and impress for that to be met.
Thank you. And Mr. Park, will you do the same thing? I'd like two voices, not one, pressing them.
Sir, yes,
Monday, January 26th for submission to the council.
understood.
And there's no risk at this point that the contract would be retroactive? And I think that's a question to Ms. Haitman.
There is no risk.
Um, So one of the steps for the GPS contract is, or the GPS system is implement routing technology features. So when's that going to start?
So that is part of the once the contract is fully
I understand, yes.
Yes, so that work, how the timeline will play out is we have to do what is listed in the scope of, the scope of the letter contract or routing work is not. So once we, have a full contract in place, we would then, engage the vendor and come up with the timeline in terms of when that takes and how long that takes based on our capacity, the vendor's resource and capacity as well.
All right, my question was, when will that happen? So your answer was, once the contract is approved, I'm not sure why it has to wait until then. You'll get with the contractor and discuss the timeline. That doesn't sound very satisfactory either. Can you have a date when you're going to implement the routing technology features?
So once we have a full contract, there is a language that indicates that there will be a kickoff, full kickoff meeting with the vendor to discuss the timeline and steps. So, we will have that information at some point, but due to our current letter contract scope, that is not included. But I'll be, happy to follow up and give that, info when it is available, sir.
Yeah, well, I don't really want to have another hearing, but I'm willing to have another hearing. I think I was asked the other day by somebody who likes you very much if I could not do more hearings, but I would like to see a timeline, and I think I've asked for a timeline before.
Yes, sir. So timeline-wise, we really want to give a timeline to you, sir. The timeline is based on what the vendor can do based on their schedule as well. So, this is, something that we unfortunately cannot provide when we don't have a full, contract yet. So once we, have that in place, I'll be, happy to find the quickly submit that to you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to push back again. So, it does seem to me that if you're the customer, the contractor is serving you, that you have some leverage to say to the contractor, this is when we want the work done. I kind of get that, you could come up with a date or a timeline that just isn't practical for the vendor, but it sounds like this is just, we're going to sit in a room and we'll just have a free discussion rather than you're coming in and saying, this is when we would like it. Your roadmap says spring 2026. So can I take it from that on March 22nd, you'll have implemented the routing technology features?
Also,
That would be spring of 2026.
yes, so I would not be surprised if that is not the time, unfortunately, because there are other approval processes that, need to, happen. I actually cannot say that we are going to, have this approved because there could be some flags that come up, later on as well. So it's really, hard for me to give you a concrete timeline on something where there are many dependencies for us for those things to happen first.
Did you say other approvals? Like what other approvals?
So, namely, right now it's going through, our OPLA colleagues review and approval council.
Well, that's the contract.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about, so I get it that they're not going to be able to do the work that gets you to the routing technology features until you have a contract. Presumably, you're going to have a contract in a
Yes.
couple of weeks?
Yes, I hope so.
Presumably, you're committed to pressing OPLA, maybe even sitting in their office, making sure that he has in a sit-in until they agree they'll get it to us by, what was the date I said?
January 22nd.
February 26th.
No, January
Oh.
26th. January 26th.
Oh, it is January. Yeah.
Um, Well, you could either follow up this hearing by sending us the timeline. I'm looking at the roadmap. It has vague completion dates like quote, winter 2026 or quote, spring 2026. You could follow up with a more specific timeline, or we can have another hearing.
Understood.
I'm a little over my time. Councilmember Truman?
Thank you very much, Chairman Mendelson. I think you're sensing the impatience that we feel, and the impatience that we feel comes from a history of this being pushed off and pushed off and pushed off. We're making progress. I think that's good. It also sounds like you're in pretty close communication with the contractor. You're working on things. You developed this, you have built into the contract this idea of fixing the timeline. I hope you have a sense from all the work that you've done with the contractor to date of how long approximately it's going to take, that it's not that when you sit down, that's going to be the first time that you talked about. Will that be the first time that you will have talked about how long you expect the contractor to take to do key elements of the contract?
Sir, thank you for that question. No, it's not. And the reason being is when we spoke to the vendor, obviously timeline is of our most importance here. I mean, we have to do this project right and well, and the user experience from both our agency and parents, have to be great. But where we focused on in terms of timeline, and again, I will, mention this, like, I really want this project done well and fast than most other people. Like, it is with our greatest, urgency to do this fast. Now, in terms of timeline, what the vendor and we have talked about is how long a project like this with this scope and the complexity take. And they have shared anywhere from 9 to 12 months. Now there are various components to the project, and routing is one of many different, particular, areas. Now, what we are unable to share at this moment, because the information has to be more discussed with the vendor, is what exact date does the routing system implementation date starts.
Okay, so I hear you, but I just heard you say 9 to 12 months and the contract hasn't started. But I also have heard you say that you've been doing work with the contractor. There's been talk about rollout in the spring. There's been talk about absolutely being ready for the start of the next school year. The start of the next school year is less than 9 months out. Is there what is your level of confidence that we're going to have this rolled out and in place at the start of the school year?
Yes, sir. So to my understanding, the commitment that our agency has made on this project, that is that during the school year 26-27, which is the upcoming school year, we will make sure that the implementation is done. Now, the word, for us, during, and, this is a highly complex IT project in order to implement, and the worst time to actually start something new is the beginning of the school year, because we have a lot of route changes that happen, a lot of enrollment changes occur with students as well. So routes are not stabilized until about October, and that is the most hectic time for our agency. To add on a complex, IT implementation would be something difficult to do. So it would not be at the beginning of the school year. It will be sometime during it. And the way that we are approaching this project is because we have to do this right. We would do a tier implementation. When there's a high risk project for an IT project, what I have, found to be the best, way to implement is you do it in tiers.
Okay, I got you. So, and the chairman has been pushing you on, shouldn't be 6 weeks, it should be, and part of that is the longer it takes, the deeper into the next school year we have to wait. And the 9 to 12 months, the chairman asked you, to what extent are you starting now? Does the 9 to 12 months start after the contract is approved, or are we doing work that is feeding into that 9 to 12 months now?
Yes, so we are currently doing the work that feeds into that timeline, because the letter, contract allows us to start the early implementation work.
So have we done a month's worth of the 9 to 12 months work that the contractor has estimated?
Yes.
Okay. You started off saying 3,600, serving 3,600 students. How does that compare to last year?
Last year, we ended the school year with 4,331 students on our trip ticket.
Okay, so the number served is reduced by 700. Where does that come from? To what extent is that no-shows who have been taken off the rolls? How did the rolls get reduced by 700?
So two primary impacts were based on one. We have drastically increased our parent reimbursement. Sorry, sir, not parent reimbursement. Parent stipend program has been expanded, where more parents are transporting their eligible parents, and we're also seeing some parents who have told us that even though they are eligible, they actually do not want transportation services as well. And then at the same time, our growth of students who may be eligible may have changed, but I actually don't know the trend there yet, but I can find out. But there are factors that play onto that.
How much of it is the 3,600 include kids on OSSE buses and on private buses? It's both.
Yes, it's both.
So, and has the use of the parent stipend program increased on the order of 700?
Yes, so parent stipend last year ended at 350 parents enrolled. Right now, we have somewhere in the range of 900 students. I believe it's 908.
So then you did see a 600 increase there and a 700 decrease in the students served. On the no-show policy, I mean, I think everyone gets frustrated when the bus has to stop multiple times and no kid comes out, and then it makes it slower for everyone and makes it harder for you to develop efficient routes. What's happening in terms of responding to no-shows, and what kind of notice do you give to a family? We've come to your door 2-3 times, nobody's been there, we're taking you off the list. How's that working, and how much has the list reduced because of that?
So this is probably one of my second favorite projects in our strategic roadmap, following the GPS routing system implementation. So it's actually listed as a non-ridership project. It's something that we are very much focused on. The way that we handle non-ridership is that, even though this is important, and the reason why it's important is because everyone is frustrated that drivers, have to drive to homes that they don't have to go. Parents, oftentimes don't want us to knock on the door for students who don't ride. Students, on the school bus are riding longer. So, there is a level of opportunity to make operation far more efficient here. But something that we are actually very cautious about is whenever we make a change to a student route. Let's say we take out 2 non-riders on a bus tomorrow. What that is going to impact is actually going to change the pickup time that we have indicated to parents of the students who are actually riding and on the school bus, as well. So in the past, we actually have not taken out any non-riders from the trip ticket because there's sensitivity around a student's legal right to receive transportation, and this is the first year that we're looking to address how do we remove non-riders just so that we can consolidate some routes that could actually give us more efficiency. What we want to address is no student should be waiting for a school bus because a bus is traveling to a home where the student chooses not to ride. So, this is an actual full project that we're working.
Yeah, so, I mean, my question fundamentally goes to what kind of notice do you provide, but I want to say, I think that it is, where there are non-riders, it is critical that we get them off the list. This is a very expensive endeavor, and it lengthens the ride the whole experience for everyone. So we need to achieve those efficiencies. We also need to achieve those efficiencies where there are people, we hear anecdotally about students whose IEP does not really merit transportation, and then we may still be providing it. We want to be generous, but we need to fully serve the people who really need this service. So back to, what are you doing to make sure that we're focused on them? And what are you doing to provide notice to parents whenever there's a change to the route?
Yes, so this is the first year that we will start notifying families of non-ridership. We have to provide proof of non-ridership as well. So we're doing a trip ticket review, and we will have to, notify the parents and the schools that, we will be making changes to the route. What we also, have to do is we have to notify the students and the parents who ride on a route with the non-riders, because their timing could shift by anywhere from half an hour to an hour of late pickup, early pickup. Some parents will be happy to have a later one, or some people, tend to not want any, types of changes as well. But, we agree with you, and this is, why we're working, on it as our key strategic roadmap project.
Okay, so just as a marker, I think this is a thing I'm going to keep coming back to about what's happening in terms of non-ridership, what's happening in terms of folks who may not be eligible, who are still getting the service. Can you speak to me for a moment about where we stand on the vans?
Yes, so we have procured 14 vans. Based on my last update with our DPW colleagues, they are headed to us by end of January, and we should be, able to implement some routes, using those vans.
So, and those vans will replace buses. It's not that they add new routes. Will they replace buses, or will they create new routes?
Well, so they would be an addition to our fleet, but anytime when we may have a fleet concern, and we want to make sure that the non-CDL project is to more so that we retain employees and give them a career growth opportunity, let's say for bus attendants, or be able to hire non-CDL licensed staff to operate vans. So it wouldn't actually impact our current route per se, but it's to help maintain our current staffing.
Okay, last thing, Chairman Mendelson, and then I'll leave it to you. You updated your manual. To what extent have you provided notice to all the parents of an update to your handbook?
So we annually update our parent handbook each year. We post it on the website. We actually don't have a practice of notifying whenever there is an update. I mean, this is an opportunity for the parents, who are watching to actually know, and I hope they can, go and, find those resources valuable as well. But if there's a need for, us to actually send out a communication to parents, we have phone numbers and text, process for every single parent. So we'll be, happy to send out a text, indicating our parent, handbook has been updated on our site.
To the extent it seems like a low-hanging fruit to give people a heads up
It is,
that it's
yes.
changed. Okay, with that, I will turn it back to you, Chairman Mendelson, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. This is an elementary question, but there are 3 ways that a parent who has an IEP for transportation can get transportation: buses, or for some, if they're eligible, private transportation, or a parent stipend. Am I correct?
Yes. So when a student, and thank you for that question. Let me actually walk through it here. So when a student is eligible for student transportation, sometimes the most common way is to have the student ride on our yellow school bus. Now, if they, when we have staffing shortages, our agency can make an operational adjustment. And if it makes sense to have the student on a private route transportation, we make that operational changes. Now, there's another subset there where the IEP may require us to have the student be placed on a private route transportation. And the other option is for us to offer parent stipend program for parents to join. So it's more like 3.5 options.
Okay. And in your testimony, you had a graph that showed that the budget for fiscal year 2026 is $123 million. The budget book says 133 million. Do you know why the difference?
Yes, so OSSE's budget is built with both a local funding and $10 million in Medicaid. So the graphic that may have been attached to the testimony has, only shows local dollars. There should be a caveat or the disclaimer at the bottom that indicates that there is a $10 million in Medicaid.
And that $10 million Medicaid is not a reimbursement. It is in addition to the 123 million.
Well, it works as a reimbursement process. So given our prior spending history and what we are able to get reimbursed, OCFO basically gives us like a line of credit for us to spend, and we work internally at the agency to get the reimbursement back throughout the year.
Would you follow up after the hearing? I had earlier asked you to follow up regarding a timeline.
Yes.
For the roadmap steps. But in addition, you were here when Ty Andrews testified. She testified that the reimbursement was simply stopped, I think in October, November, and she hasn't gotten an explanation. Could you get back to us on what's going on? It could be that there was some determination. I'm not asking you for you to tell me that right now, or maybe even to tell me that later. But it also sounds like there's a failure in communication. So if you could follow up with regard to her and get back to us with what's going on.
Yes, and if I may shed some light on this topic, obviously we looked into this case earlier this morning as well. So we do know the why, but while I can't, share a particular individual circumstances, if I can just quickly highlight the three reasons why a payment may not go through. The first reason is, there's an attendance requirement for parent stipends. So if the child is never going to school, we don't pay the parent, and there has to be a 70% or higher attendance rate. Again, I'm not saying this is the case for this particular parent, but that is the most common category we see for payments not going through. Second reason is there is an IEP adjustment that makes, so the IEP team makes the determination that a student is no longer eligible for transportation. That's something our agency provides technical support. I understand that's your priority as well. We need the support of our IEP teams to actually make the changes so that students who may not be eligible for transportation may not be eligible. So meaning that there are months where certain students may no longer be eligible for school bus, parent stipend, all the things that I mentioned earlier. And the next a common reason is actually tax and wage related. So if a parent may have a wage garnishment or a tax withholding, then the government would actually not pay the parent and then just move that funding amount. So there are different ways for this, but I'll be happy to provide a specific for how this impacts Ms.
Well, there's also a fourth possible reason, and that is that a mistake is being made.
Yes.
So to me, what's most important is that the parent testified that she doesn't know.
Yes.
And I believe it was part of her testimony that she asked OSSE, who told her to ask the school, and she asked the school, told her to ask OSSE. I may have that a little bit wrong, but I'd like you to look into it. And I'm guessing that there's, whatever the reason, that there's a communication failure, and I would like that understood.
Got it. Thank you.
So if you would follow up with that, would you also provide us with a copy of the updated OSSE DOT family handbook? You mentioned that it's just been updated, so would you provide that as well?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. What steps have been taken since the last hearing to reduce vacancies and to reduce turnover and to improve showing up?
So this week has been a rather interesting week. So on Thursday, which was yesterday, OSSE DOT had one of its strongest performance. So this was the first time in many, many times when all the schools are open. So, some days, some schools are closed for professional development day, spring break, and otherwise based on the school calendar. Every school was open yesterday, and we had so many staff showed up to work, and we had a bench, and we pushed out every bus from every single terminal on time without, having to tier and double route. I think this goes to, you have one time, told me at this, table that this is an operation that has to be perfect. It can't be an A minus, it can't be an A, like it just, needs to be an A plus. So in terms of staffing, a lot of our staff showed up, and we're doing a lot of work to actually get there. But this week we had one of our strongest performance where we actually got 97% of students on time at school, which is a far higher number than our usual, average of 89%, 88%. Now, there are things that, happen on the roads where there may be accidents. There was an accident on Monday on I-95 that blocked both directions. Helicopters have to fly in, and a bus got, somewhere stuck on there, waiting for traffic where students, may have arrived, late about, 20, 30 minutes. But we have done a lot of work, and I just cannot thank our folks enough. Some people, at the agency are watching this, but we do so much from our HR work and our terminal management and our staff, and they are showing up to work. Like our attendance this week is getting better. So the things that we're actually doing is we gotta let people take a breather and have some bandwidth to operate well, in their job. Well, we made some changes in terms of hiring is quite hard. It is quite hard to hire a school bus driver. We've gone through, hiring first, and it's very hard to find a qualified CDL license holder to want to come to work for, OSSE as well. That's why we move some funding, for, let's say, from PS to, MPS to run our private route operation. So that's a sensitive, area we closely, monitor. We've gotten to the point where private routes actually now cost the same as running a student transportation route on a yellow school bus. But to answer your question of how are we doing better with having more people show up and having enough resources to move the students, we have actually made tremendous gains since the last time we spoke here.
All right, so that's people showing up. But what about vacancies? You still have a large number of vacancies.
Yes, so the way that we're currently paying for our private route operation is private routes. And so basically, private route vendors, parents are helping us do what school bus drivers do. They're transporting students for us. So where, how we allocate the funding is rather than filling our vacancies that may take time and, it's hard to find bus drivers, we're reallocating our own agency funds to be able to do that. So it's my, understanding that there's a reprogramming right now happening to move funding to more funding to parent stipend, more funding to private routes. So we have to maintain some of our vacancies in order for us to have that type of flexibility to make sure that all students can go to school on time. So I'm not too concerned about our vacancy rate because we're meaningfully using any type of vacancy savings into our operation to make sure that students can go to school.
So what I'm hearing is that not much has happened in terms of reducing vacancies. However, some of the salary lapse from the vacancies is being used is going to be reprogrammed to cover the private transportation or the stipends.
Correct. Well, I have a lot of my HR team folks watching right now. A lot has happened. We've tried to do a hiring fair and, hosted a big event to hire more drivers and attendants. We just did not yield the value we got from the efforts that we put in a few months ago.
And what has happened since the last hearing to build better partnerships with the IEP teams to have more influence over OSSE DOT decisions by these IEP teams?
So we always have partnership with our IEP teams. We can't transport a student unless the IEP team and the schools tell us what the accommodation needs are. So there's always a touch point with our LEA partners and our OSSE, DOT, and we sometimes get invited to meetings to discuss more on the particular needs, what's possible and what's not. So that's an ongoing thing that we have always been doing.
I'm not sure I'm finding that answer satisfactory. So you've been here at each of the hearings.
Yes.
We had testimony from other jurisdictions where their special needs transportation systems try to get involved with the IEP teams so that the IEP teams are not making transportation decisions without consulting the transportation officials. I'm not hearing that much has changed in the past month in that regard here.
So we have in the last month reviewed the expert testimonies as well. I mean, we are, every opportunity that you give us to bring expert, testimony, I mean, witnesses is for us to learn and see what other jurisdictions are doing. What we have also found out is they are not required to go to every single IEP. They have no mandatory requirement to have transportation folks sit in on IEP. They have to get invited. They want to do more, and have more resources to it. We want to do more and have those types of, opportunities. So, we are just like the others who came here before us, and explained that, hey, there is a need for more transportation involvement, discussion, needed in the IEP. But, as you are aware, we are not a required group to sit in on IEPs, but we actually do attend many of those because we get invited, and sometimes we reach out to the parents and see what's possible and not.
My recollection of that testimony was that they were more aggressive about participating. So if your statement is they're not required, correct, but they were aggressive about participating in these transportation decisions. So I will ask this question again. You had a legal opinion from your general counsel with regard to air tags?
Yes.
To what extent is that of concern with regard to implementing this GPS tracking?
Yes, so that's probably one of the core components of something we need to do right. So because we are the only one of the two jurisdictions in this country where the state education agency runs a student transportation, the other state is the state of Hawaii. And what we have to make sure is because LEAs have this exception called indirectory exception where they are able to get,
I've read the opinion.
Oh, got it. Okay. Sorry. Well, let me then, explain to how we're, addressing that. FERPA for us, after much, research, is not going to be a concern for us in implementing this project, because what we have to do is we need to make sure that other parents do not have a way to see where the potential home address of other students are. And, because we do door-to-door service where every stop is in front of a home address of a particular person, how we're thinking about this are what are the information that parents critically need in order for them to properly notified by OSSE. Probably the first thing, and we've been testing a lot of these different ways in a manual way. One is parents have found very helpful when they know a bus is departing the terminal. So bus has departed the terminal at 5:30 a.m. That gives them a sense of peace, and they know that the bus is actually coming, and that actually does not have any FERPA implication because there's no way to know yet. And then it's like whichever stops are there, we can say you're the third stop, or your ETA for pickup is anywhere between 7:20 to 7:30. Those types of text-based information, the bus arrived at the school at particular time. So those are one way, the baseline way to address the FERPA concern. We all use Uber, Lyft, DoorDash. They all show the vehicle on the map. Same thing for Amazon these days. So we want to push that even more. We don't want to just give a text-based notifications to parents. We actually want them to see the map. Now, in order for us to do that, there are some different engineering ways for us to do it. One way is to only allow the maps to be visible in different segments of the routes, where it's not showing where the bus is stopping at other places. That's one way to do it. We can build a large radius on a map where it's hard to see where the stoppage is, but it's in the vicinity of couple, blocks, in a particular, neighborhood. So those are the types of, discussions that we will have, with the vendor, in terms of how to make sure that we can provide an, application that the parents will, actually.
So is that
use.
going to slow down implementation?
I mean, it is part of the implementation, so this is not a surprise to our vendor as well. So I don't see why it would stop the implementation, slow down the implementation. So the answer is no there.
Okay, just for the record, I don't agree with OSSE's general counsel's opinion. I don't think that it's applicable or interpreted correctly. But your testimony is that you're, in light of that opinion, you don't see that that's going to slow down implementation of the GPS tracking.
No, sir.
I'm over my time. There's another hearing. Folks are here for that. So we're going to finish up here probably in about 20 minutes, I'm guessing. Councilmember Fruman and Councilmember Bond.
Okay, great. And in respect to all the people who are waiting, I will try to be quick. So on the budgeting issue and the use of vacancy dollars as a way of paying for the private pay, we've had a series of hearings with the CFO and others about the way in which the budget works, where the budget we get isn't real and things are moved around systematically and sometimes predictably. So I can understand in this year where you didn't know how much was going to happen in terms of parent stipend, and you didn't know how much you were going to do in private pay. But I hope the budget that we get has a realistic prediction of how much is going to be served, how many kids are going to be served in the OSSE yellow buses, how many kids are going to be served through private service, and how many kids are going to be served through the parent stipend, so that we're not in a situation where we get numbers that aren't even a realistic prediction of how it's going to operate at the more granular level. Is that your intention? I don't like the idea of having a pot of money in vacancies that you're going to use in a different way. I hope that's not your plan in the upcoming budget, and that you'll give us a realistic budget of how the dollars will be spent in the different pillars.
So that's an active discussion process for us to make sure that we anticipate what our needs are. OSSE DOT for us is because we do the budget planning earlier on. It's hard to predict how the next school year would look like, and we can only predict it based on similar things happening as well. So those are the types of discussions that we are obviously having to make sure that our budget reflects what our needs are.
Including at that granular level of which of these pillars is how much weight will be put on each of these pillars. I think we should see that up front. What's your prediction on that? On the IEP side, an issue that is, to what extent, even if you're not at the meeting, if there's a request for transportation services, do you review the IEP to see if it merits transportation services and have a back and forth with the LEA if you don't believe that it merits transportation services? I worry, and we hear anecdotal stories about the service being used when it isn't necessary, isn't called for, and that is expensive and is a burden on a system that's serving a lot of vulnerable kids and makes it harder to serve the ones who really need it. To what extent do you scrutinize the merit of a request for transportation services?
So under federal law, not just anyone at OSSE DOT can view a student's IEP, because we don't have decision, making powers, as well. What our agency has to do is to develop guidance, technical guidance in terms of what to do, what not to do. We can, we have a separate team at, OSSE, who could do who does, a monitoring aspect of IEP compliance as well, from an overall sense. But we we can't go into every transportation IEP and start looking at the feasibility of it, because our job, at least my job and my purview is we have to transport the students that our LEA partners tells us to, and we have to know that they are trained well, and we provide technical guidance in terms of their well. So my purview obviously is to make sure we transport the students we're being asked to transport.
Well, I mean, it worries me, honestly. And in lots of places, you have a school district and you have a transportation system and they're together. And so there's a shared interest and there's shared participation. And here, we don't have that. We have transportation done by OSSE, and then we have all these LEAs. And it's not even that we just have one big LEA and OSSE over here and separate interests, but we have 70 LEAs. And the idea that somebody can just say, please do it, even if it's not called for, that's a very expensive request that burdens the system. So is there any way that, how can we avoid that situation where we have transportation provided in a setting where pretty clearly is not called for?
So this week, I was made aware of a particular parent where the student's IEP actually removed the transportation eligibility from the LEA side. That has triggered some complaints in terms of what the next steps are. But that's at least one example from earlier this week where the process is working. I think there are students who are gaining IEP eligibility as well as student transportation eligibility, but there are students who lose the eligibility, or students who are at least determined to not have a need for transportation as well. This is an area that I trust our LEA partners, that they're doing the job that they are doing to make sure that the eligibility is based on the student's medical condition under IDEA.
Yeah, I hear you and regret, quoting Ronald Reagan, but trust but verify. I mean, we got to make this system work. This is probably a thing that I'll be back and forth with you on over time, of how do we make sure that we are serving the kids who need the service, not bogging the system down with kids who don't need the service, because that hurts the kids who need it. So I think there's the infrastructure provides no accountability, and the incentive structure is, why not just provide transportation? And we have to be frugal about it, not just because of the use of dollars, but because of the way in which it affects the system as a whole. So I'll be back to you on that. Last question. The vans, which I actually think is an exciting thing, but how are you going to decide which routes get a van and which routes stay with the yellow bus?
So it's for operational feasibility only. This is a very similar question as to how we have certain students on private route operation versus a yellow school bus. We can't make certain favors to others in terms of which new van. I mean, I oftentimes hear from parents in terms of, well, this vendor has a much nicer car than the other vendor that shows up to the school. And, sometimes we have to, explain to them that it is not within our control to pick and choose which vehicle model and year a particular car actually is. I mean, obviously our staff will be pretty excited about having to drive a new vehicle as well, but the determination is based on capacity and feasibility. So we have routes where there are 15 students. We have routes where there are 3 students. So we can't push a 15 student route onto a 7-10 passenger van per se. So we'll, have to go through the right way of, making sure that there's no CBA violation of, moving the vehicle as well. So it will be a thoughtful process.
Okay, and it's a complicated process because you have routes with 3 kids and routes with 15 kids and routes with 8 kids, but it could be that you have a route with 8 kids, and it's important that those kids have space and not be too close to each other as part of the way in which this transportation is managed. And it may be that you would say, okay, this one has fewer kids, but the special needs of those kids might suggest that two routes that both have 8 are different. One, the kids need more space for one reason or another, and the other they don't. So it does seem like this is going to be a thing where you're going to have to take a close look to determine what fits and what doesn't fit.
I agree.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Bonds, did you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Parks, for being here. And of course, Ms. Hayfield, always good to see you, always. I really came initially to be assured that the budget that you're presenting is adequate for the service that you believe you are providing. And I'm still interested in that. But I'm also hearing about the diversity of the services that you have to provide and how we strive to provide services in a variety of ways so that those who cannot on their own get to their educational center, that we get them there. So I thank you for that. And I'm sure the parents are ecstatic to know that we have this system. But it just seems to me that, I listened to my colleagues and some of the questions here of late that they're putting on the table. And I too have some similar questions. And so I want to be clear. The service that you provide, it supports the educational system. Am I correct? You do not make determinations as to who gets it. You just follow through. You're just a stop along the way of implementation. Am I correct?
Yes, it's an important step, but yes.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So when you handle delays that the system has nothing to do with, as you mentioned, on the freeway, there's a stop, what have you. How is that handled as far as communicating to the school, communicating to the parent who has already called the school and knows that their student is not there or that their child is not there yet?
Yes, so we have a process in which when there is a significant, a unreasonable delay on the school bus route, then we have our call center member contact the parent either via a text or a phone call. Now, we can't call every parent, when there are those issues, but when there are serious issues, let's say there's a police, had to be called, or either it's MPD or ambulance, had to be called due to a particular incident, because those all trigger delays, as well, we make sure that our parent resource center is able to communicate to parents. The other things that we're trying is we have bus attendants who have contact information of the parents, as well. And I found that, some parents really value that connection with the attendant, in terms of just knowing where, where things are and what the, situation is. So, we have a parent, resource center that, does that, function for us. Now, in terms of schools, we have LEA connections, LEAs, contact us quite often. We contact them. We have a line of communication with our LEA team. We have an LEA liaison team within the parent resource center as well. So when things, happen, and, this happens probably commonly when there's like a weather, inclement weather issues, or a pipe bursts at the school and all the students are being, released, then, we have that, communication.
So you're describing that you have a information relay system that immediately happens. If I'm a driver of one of your, school bus or your private vans that I've heard of, or even a parent, but let's say the van or the school bus, is there a protocol that says when I'm delayed that I must reach out to the parent center, or what's my protocol?
Yes, so the protocol here is we give a 30-minute window. So if a pickup time is 7:30, and then, due to traffic and whatnot, other things can, happen. I mean, DC is just an extremely high traffic city as well. So as long as we can arrive between 7:15 through 7:45, then there's no extra notification going out other than an attendant who just, tends to send a text to parents when we're outside that window. Let's say we can't come until 8:30, then we would send out communication to parents via text in terms of your route is running late by X minutes.
All right, and so in collecting your data from your parent center, what is the frequency of calls that come in from parents or from the schools when there's a delay within 15 minutes, or is it more 45 minutes? What I'm trying to understand is how is the parent center really helping in the process?
Yes. So Parent Center is the second most knowledgeable place on what is happening on the road. And the reason why I mentioned second is because they are not actually on the road. So the staff on the bus know the conditions of the routes best. So they are required to contact our dispatch center to report of any particular incident. And once that information is received, then the dispatch center, then, which works in the PRC, then sends a, communication out, to the parents. So it is a manual process. That's why I think we're all excited about this GPS project as well, because we all dream of a situation where a bus just leaves the terminal and it automatically sends a notification out to all parents. And there's a technology in place where it estimates how fast and how quickly one needs to be picked up and by when. And when it starts to deviate from that, then it just automatically sends a notification out to parents. So I really do think this would change.
I'm sorry, but you will also explain if I heard you correctly, that system really only works if we have it working. And what I mean is that this system is sort of like the dream for the future, correct?
Yes.
We don't have it now, but we can have it. But then will this system, if the system does that, in your opinion, is that going to close down the number of calls you get from parents about where is the bus, where is my child?
Yes, by 75%.
All right, okay, that's what I was trying to get to. Where are we with this new plan? And the new plan is covered in this $133 million.
Yes, well, technically, no. The new plan is covered under a $3 million capital project that sits outside of the local budget of $130
It's in that overall.
Yes.
It's in the overall.
Yes.
This new plan will be eligible for Medicaid 70%.
Well, so our reimbursement is based on how we transport the students. So this, it isn't like the capital project is funded out of Medicaid, but yes.
But it will be eligible. All of the rides will be eligible. Even the parent stipend?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's what I was most concerned with, trying to understand whether or not this is a budget that covers all of the nuances of the program, the three parts, the school bus, the private, and the stipend. Did you provide to us a clear understanding of how much we currently spend in those three brackets? The breakdown, parent stipend, private, and then the school bus itself?
Well, I can actually provide that information for you. So this school year, we are anticipated to spend, let's see, 27 million on not 27. 27 is our entire contract funding at the agency. 15.4 million in private routes, which is a decrease from last year's 25. We are also anticipating anticipated to spend anywhere between $3 to $4 million a year in parent stipend, depending on like how much we pay on a month-by-month basis.
And how much did we spend in FY 25 for parent stipend?
We spent $900K, but that was because we only had 350 parents self-transporting. Right now, we have close to 1,000 parents.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, our student cost hasn't changed.
Okay, so cost hasn't changed. I know I'm over my time. Sure, the chairman will hold me to that. Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you, Councilor Bounds. I just had one last question, and that is, we've received information from OSSE on bus driver and aid training. However, we are still hearing from some parents that aides or substitute aides do not know how to accurately buckle a harness or car seat. How does OSSE ensure, beyond training attendants, that drivers and aides are prepared?
So thank you for that question. Training, safety is at the core of our operation. So we need to make sure that students are able to be buckled up properly and secured on the school bus. Every student in our school bus, all 3,600, including our private routes, all students must wear a seatbelt on the bus. Now, sometimes we help the students, other students are able to make sure. Our requirement is for the aide to make sure that the student has a seatbelt in place. Of them, about 100 students actually have a more specialized requirement for a seatbelt. So either, students are keep taking off their, seatbelt. So some IEPs require us to have this buckle guard that prevents the students from unbuttoning, or a harness that does a more, full body securement as well. And we have 100 students every day that our staff, must be, able to ensure that the students are able to have those, security. And the way that we operate is every trip ticket so every day when we print out the trip ticket, it shows which students what support the student needs. Some students cannot sit by a window. Some students need the harness or booster seat support. So we provide training every year as an annual refresher. Any new hires have to go through training. But then, there are some times, let's say, there have been, instances that we all, know of when there is, something that's not properly working. Then we have our, safety and specialist team actually go to the terminal and discuss the, concerns, with the staff as well. We contact the parent, as well. But, to me, even though there are many, areas and we have to do better, I actually don't oftentimes hear about hundreds of, students not being, able to serve. But I understand that there are times when we, have to do a tighter, a refresher for students, as well.
I didn't get that last part.
Yep.
A refresher for students?
A refresher for our staff. So our safety team from
So are you doing a refresher on a regular basis or only when there's a complaint?
So we do an annual refresher for all 4 terminal staff, but when there's an individualized case where the parent is raising concerns, then we do extra to make sure that we have a more individualized training for staff.
So this is my understanding from what you've said. When a driver or aide are hired, they get training. And then every year there's refresher training. And then if there's an incident, there would be additional training.
Correct.
If there's training and there's refresher training, then why do we still get reports of incidents where kids were falling out of their seats, weren't properly buckled? You'll remember at the October hearing, there was a picture of a kid who was like upside down in their seat. Why are we getting those reports if there's training and refresher training?
So, we have to make sure that staff are trained for those things to never actually happen. But when there are individual, cases where something may not be working on the school bus, then, we have to immediately react to those situations, as well. My ask here is, as you get them and as we hear them, as well, we have to, take the immediate, action of addressing those, situations. So if you, happen to see a growing volume of it, I'll be, happy to address them, as they get it. I mean, that was an, incident that you described that has happened. We have made sure that we spoke to the staff, and it hasn't, happened again. While we don't want ever a student to fall off a seat or fall off a wheelchair, as well, we have the infrastructure in place to ensure that they are not a common occurrence, and we have to continue to train our staff if that happens to be a growing problem. So I'm happy to work with you and any parents and community members to make sure that the volume of those incidents happening is not common.
I think I'll leave it there. I'm going to end this hearing. Councilmember Bonds? Yes.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Mr. Park, as it relates to the number of vacancies that you have with you, is this exclusively vacancies of drivers, or is it drivers and I guess aides that ride with the students?
So when we have let's say, when we are reporting our vacancy rate to council and, otherwise, we look at the overall budget of OSSE DOT. So it includes drivers, attendants, and other administrative support roles.
All right. I would like to work with your office to see how we can, through our unionized employees and others, alleviate some of that workforce concern that you have.
Yes,
And
thank you.
so I would like to send a follow-up talking to you about salaries, timeline, what is required. I know that there are some retirees who might be willing to get involved in helping in this process. So,
Understood.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. I'm going to close down this hearing, and we'll start the next hearing in about 10 minutes. This has been a hearing, a roundtable on the Office of State Superintendent of Education, Special Education, Transportation. I don't think I said this at the beginning of the hearing, but the record in this matter will close in 2 weeks. That is at 5 p.m. on January 30th, 2026. There are a number of follow-up items that you all are going to follow up on, including getting the contract to the council by January 26th. I appreciate your testimony, and the time is 1:52 p.m. and this hearing or roundtable